As a whole, Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari is now not attending an AU summit this week, and it's a major blow, of course, to plans to launch a free trade agreement across 54 African countries. So this is big for the continent, especially if you believe that there are numerous benefits to free trade. We're joined on the line for a quick chat with Dr. Martyn Davies from Deloitte, MD of Emerging Markets and Africa there. Thanks for being with us, Martyn. So this was to be the formal launch of the African Continental Free Trade Area Treaty, but presumably that cannot exist without Nigeria.
Yes, good evening, Francis. You're so right to say it. I mean, since 2012, the AU has been talking about this continent-wide sweeping free trade liberalized area, and of course, Africa, we really need it. African countries don't trade enough with each other, as we well know, and amongst, regionally, probably the lowest trading region of any globally. So having Nigeria, South Africa has been a major proponent of this Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, and Nigeria, arguably, with South Africa, will be the two bookends, if you will, of this. Last week, Wednesday, I believe, the Nigerian cabinet did endorse the deal, this continental-wide free trade agreement. But I think political pressure domestically, particularly from organized labor, has resulted in Buhari, as you say, pulling out of this big summit in Kigali, Rwanda this week. Not good news for the continent, I'm afraid, and not good news for our very pro-free trade in the region, sort of foreign commercial policy in recent years.
We also have strong unions. What's South Africa's stance on this?
Well, I think, South Africa, we tend to be very pro-free trade in our own region because we haven't got much competition, to be quite honest. I think when we're talking about other countries, think sort of Asia, think India, think China, I think we're far less less pro-free trade as we have been in our own region. And I think if you're looking from many of our neighboring African economies' perspective, South Africa has a much more diversified, stronger export base and maybe seems more as a competitive threat. So I think we do have to sympathize to an extent in terms of how these countries view us and how they seek to be aspirational, industrializing economies, whilst at the same time facing the competitive trade challenge from South Africa. But of course, ultimately, economies need to open up and trade. And I would argue, and economic history would show this to be correct, that development and economic progression only comes from economic sort of opening, trade and commerce. And that needs to be encouraged, particularly in a very sort of fragmented region and non-globalized, arguably, not enough globalized, as African economies tend to be.
Well, this was to counter that old adage that it's easier to send your goods to London and trade there than with the rest of Africa. Just explain what you think are the real benefits to African economies.
Well, we need to trade our way into economic progress. The challenge is, of course, it comes back to the ultimate situation we always talk about is infrastructure. Very bad infrastructure. It hampers trade. It's very inflationary, i.e. it pushes up cost, distribution, logistics costs and the like. And it's interesting that this summit is taking place in Rwanda, which is in the heart of Central Africa, East Africa. It's a landlocked country. And pretty much how do you build a trading economy in a landlocked, small African geography? Very difficult. Of course, if you're like Kenya, perhaps, and maybe a few others exporting flowers, cut flowers, that works into the through flying and the like. But to really build an export-driven economy, I think we're going to be looking at sort of coastal regions of the continent, but we need more enabling infrastructure. Think roads, rail, ports and the like, but not just the hard infrastructure, it's also the serviceability, the soft infrastructure, if you will, of how processes work and create efficiency. This has underpinned the trade success of Asia in the last generation. Ultimately, we need to see the same sort of efficiencies come to our own continent as well.
Yeah, and if everybody sells what they're good at, the idea is everybody benefits. Nigeria, though, saw that oil price go down. The speculation is that they're feeling insecure. They want to protect their other industries, so not have a flood of imports. Is Nigeria becoming the United States, sort of Africa?
Well, you rightfully say, Francis, in July 2014, that oil price plunged. Nigeria reacted to a very protectionist policy, some arguably not terribly rational. But at the same time, and I'll be up there in a few months' time, we're taking some major multinational manufacturing type companies up into Nigeria through Deloitte, and we help to set up shop there. But to build a very sort of integrated value chain and a trading export-driven economy, you need to open up to trade as well, because you need to have those inputs into your manufacturing process. it's a fine line, it's a fine balance, of course, but I think arguably, as you allude to, Nigeria has been a bit too protectionist for its own good. At the same time, that also sort of stymies and obstructs the investment by substantive multinationals in the country that seek to have a global sort of value supply chain. So protectionism is always a very, very short-term measure, and I think Donald Trump, as you allude to, will probably learn that as well.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Martyn Davies from Deloitte Africa. And yeah, a big blow to those plans. Muhammadu Buhari, the head of Nigeria, not going to that AU summit where this big treaty was to be discussed, was to be decided upon. We'll follow how that plays out. Bongani?
Well, Francis, talking about the U.S.